It's a real honor to be here. This is a really important space, and each person and all of you watching, we have the opportunity to make a safer, healthier, and better internet. So just to say a little bit more about the perspective that I bring to this. Search for Common Ground is a peace building organization. And in fact, I came into this work after being a journalist. And for decades, we used media, drama, reality TV, cinema, radio to really change the way that we understood conflict, thought about it, the way that we healed relationships. And it was a really, really powerful and impactful tool. But about 6, 7 years ago, it just became really clear that we were no longer able to reach these massive audiences through these powerful media tools because the internet was becoming so important and so pervasive. And so we asked ourselves this question, is the internet promise or peril for peace? And how able are we as peace builders to understand that question? And it led to us doing a number of things, notably coming up with the understanding, just as Vanessa and this entire community have understood, of the power of holding online space safely, inclusively, with engagement, and with the ability to manage conflict. And you can see in this link here that we've developed a self-guided online course for people who want to get better at doing just that. We also, as I've heard many of the session presenters talk about, understood that the design of technology affects how safe and inclusive the space that we moderate is. And so the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion, you can see the website there, is aimed at doing that. So I just wanted to offer those two things because those of you watching and for the other panelists, we'd welcome more collaboration about the digital community stewards and with the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion. So today we're going to talk about Syria and the challenge and the opportunity of holding space across many divides. So some very, very basic facts here. We had mass anti-government demonstrations in March 2011. Since then, over 500,000 people have lost their lives. The next stat, if you really think about it, is mind-blowing, that about half of Syrians have been displaced from their homes. And today you have more than 6 million Syrians outside of Syria, some in the neighboring countries and some further afield. And lastly, the context in Syria is one where it is one of the most difficult contexts to bring people together. They may be living 15 minutes from each other, and yet they would have to travel through 2 countries to actually be able to meet each other. So as we'll hear from our guests, that situation where the country is divided across deep lines and with different administrative control makes it all that more imperative for us to look at the digital space. So without any further ado, let me introduce our 2 guests today from the Syrian Civic Space Initiative. First is Farah Hwijeh, who is one of the co-founders of the Civic Space Initiative. She is a research consultant on women's rights and gender equality. She supported the activities of a wide range of civil society groups. As a facilitator and in this space, you've supported the Women's Advisory Board to the UN Special Envoy as part of the facilitation team since 2016. And you're, in addition to doing research on gender equality, you have a master's in environmental management. Our second guest is Rouba Mhaissen, excuse me. And she is also a co-founder of the Syrian Civic Space Initiative. You'll hear that there's a lot of women who were involved in the founding of the Syrian Civic Space Initiative. Rouba has a PhD in gender and economic development and has been working for years in support of internally displaced people. So let's hear from you, Farah, about the origin of the Civic Space Initiative. It was founded 4 years ago. What was happening and what led to creating this?
Thank you, Lena, very much for the introduction, and thank you, Vanessa, for the opportunity. Actually, it's as you just described, Lena, the situation in Syria is pretty complicated, it's pretty complex. And it's due to the nature of the conflict, because it has political, social, racial dimensions to it, but it's also because it's been ongoing for the last 13 years. And this situation and impacted very badly the communities, the local communities, and the society in general, which needed a lot of spaces for dialogue, which unfortunately was not really there. There were most of the spaces were non-Syrian spaces and did not really discuss a Syrian agenda. Leading one of these spaces was leading the consultation for the one and the main donor conference in Brussels that used to take every year since 2017. But unfortunately, the Syrians who managed to access these kind of spaces were mostly the well-prominent organizations, the well-established ones, those who have the access to these kind of spaces. But missing on the way all the voices from the actual people active on the ground in the local communities, those who don't have the capacities to access either logistically or also if they are part of the hard to reach areas, which unfortunately there are so many. And also due to the type of nature, the nature of the conflict, which divided the country into different cantons where the communication was very challenging among Syrians. And suddenly, after a few years, we started to see that Syrians don't talk to each other, and they don't have the means to talk to each other, which makes the situation even worse. But starting 2020 and due actually to COVID-19, which was a major event that paralyzed the universe and impacted Syrians directly because it's prevented them from actively being present during the consultation leading to the conference, which in turn will produce a lot of recommendations that leads to influencing EU programming towards Syria and also EU policies towards Syria. So for us, this was an opportunity because, as I said, the demand is there to have spaces where Syrians can meet a wider spectrum of Syrians. So we found the COVID-19 confinement era is like an opportunity where we can mobilize in a different ways. And we proposed the idea to the EU to have this initiative where it can be a space where Syrians can meet and provide this kind of consultation and recommendations, and they don't miss their role in influencing the programming that will be impacting Syrians directly, whether they are in Syria or in the neighboring countries where a lot of Syrian refugees are actually based. So this space was created, as I said, in 2020 in order to provide this opportunity for Syrians a wider spectrum of Syrians to meet. And what I found very unique about this space is that actually it was initiated by Syrians. It has been led by Syrians and actually by 5 women facilitators who are coming from a very different backgrounds from Syria, different geographies, different places, coming with different kind of experience. We have people focusing on economy, on gender and women's rights, on media, on project management, on environment. So we brought in all our connections and network and access and expertise to build this initiative, which gave us a better access to different places, to different geographies, and also together we managed to create this safe space where Syrians can actually meet and can discuss the priorities of their own communities. So basically, it started by discussing themes that were proposed by the EU conferences in 2020, but right on after in 2021, we decided that no, we need to be the agenda designer. So we decided to work on a consultation in different perspective. We wanted the EU to hear directly what are the needs for Syrians coming from different locations, taking in consideration the variety of needs and the variety of and the huge differences in the context, but at the same time, looking at Syria as a whole, as a one country. After 4 years, the initiative is still evolving. And actually, it became more of like a multifunctional platform to facilitate cross-geography dialogue, linking different levels of engagement. For instance, we have participants that they are part of the track 2, what we call the informal kind of diplomacy. Also, we have participants coming from track 3, which is the community and civil society level. And this unique positioning of the platform made it easier for us to bridge this gap in communication between these two levels by engaging people actively in these discussions and where they can hear each other directly, where they can pass on messages, where they can agree, and in so many cases where they don't agree, but they manage to create an empathy where they started to listen and acknowledge the severity of these conditions on everyone. During the activities of the platform, it was very critical and important for all of us to assure the balanced representation among all actors and geographies. As I said, Syria is very diverse. We have at least 17 different racial, ethnical, religious groups. So and each one of them, they have different experience on the conflict and they have different perspective on the conflict. So for us, it was very essential and crucial to have a space where they can meet, they can feel finally that they've been heard, and also to design the session in a way that they don't feel intimidated by the presence of others, but also discuss technically the issues they're facing and try to find solutions together. So and also because of this severity of the conflict, it was vital for us to start to do work in a different way, not just invite people for meetings, but also to work on a trust building process, which is very well needed, and it's very crucial for any kind of dialogue, for any kind of peace building. So we came up with a lot of innovative methods. For instance, we started to really invest in one-to-one mediation and communication with the participants before the sessions in order to explain the process and see what their feedback, what their intentions, what their concerns. At the same time, do similar one-to-one consultation and mediation after the session to make sure that their points were presented and they were heard, and also to assess if there were any unsaid conflicts that we need to address in the coming sessions. Also, what we did during the session, that we had one main facilitator that was moderating the discussion, but also we have a co-pilot or co-facilitator. She was doing a vital work of sensing the differences, then sensing the conflict before it happens, and also try to mediate through chat rooms and WhatsApp in order to make this dialogue more concrete, and also to understand better this kind of conflicts going forward, to address them better in the methodology design. So it's worth also to mention, I don't want to take longer, but it's also worth to mention that before 2017, the number of Syrians between 2017 2020, the number of Syrian actors were engaged in this kind of consultation did not exceed, in best scenarios, 35 or 40. Most of them, if not all of them, are from the big prominent organization. Now, after 4 years, we managed to engage over 1,100 actors from all over the country. Especially those, actually 60% of them, they were engaged for the first time. Nobody talked to them before, nobody engaged them before in this kind of consultation. So for us, it's an opportunity where these voices can influence the decision-making and also the program design, but also where the Syrian can learn from each other and interact freely and safely.
The idea that you can bring people into a very substantive conversation about the direction of Syria and influencing key donors can only happen when there's trust. And so, you hinted at how even though you're maybe facilitating something over here, you're in a WhatsApp group over there, and you're doing more of the work preparing for that discussion. And it just, highlights the fact that creating safety and trust online requires a real understanding of the opportunities and challenges of digital tools. So Rouba, I'd love to hear more of how were you able to create a space that, enabled you to rehumanize people while talking about what the EU policy should be for Syria. Go ahead, Rouba.
Thank you so much, Lena. I'm so honored to be here, and also I've so honored to follow on to what my colleague Farah has been saying. And I guess one of the transformative experiences for us has been to be able to engage more than 1,000 Syrians, but also one of the transformative experiences for me personally is being able to work with 4 other women that closely that sometimes I talk to them more than I talk to my husband at times. It's just like a transformation experience to be among these women and be able to engage with them so deeply on issues we disagree so much about, so that we can able to be mediators amongst ourselves first and then be able to facilitate these dialogues. So that's just to say thank you. I mean, yeah, digital tools we all know that they have been transformative in our lives. They have allowed us to, facilitate communication, collaboration, access information. But just to reiterate what Farah has said, that in the case of Syria, Syria today what is Syria for me? Syria today is 3 regions within Syria, that there is like an imaginative partition between them. Between these zones, there are military partitions of each of these zones. And then you have neighboring countries, and then you have Syrians in the diaspora, like in Europe, in the US, and everywhere else in the world. So to engage Syrians means to engage all of these people in all of these different places. And I think if it wasn't for the social digital tools, we wouldn't have been able to do it. But that also comes with threats, as you said, because, in order to connect people from different backgrounds, different ideologies, for them to exchange ideas on a deeper level and to foster understanding, empathy, all of these things, you need to be able to provide a safety for these participants. And this is where it was really crucial for us, for example, to give the participants the chance to engage not in their real names, to engage in their in names that they choose, but while us as facilitators, we know the real names of these persons, because we need to also make sure that they are really real people and will not, inflict any harm on the other participants. But also, I think how digital tools allowed us to really create spaces where people will foster understanding, empathy, mutual respect. And to be able to do this, we needed to create common points between these people. So, for example, during the earthquake, people experienced the earthquake in government-held areas. People experienced the earthquake in, opposition-held areas, and people experienced earthquake in neighboring countries, in Turkey, Syrian people. So all of these people had different lived experiences, but each one of them thought, my experience is the only experience. But the digital tools actually allowed us to open a space of dialogue for all of these people. Another example would be mothers. For example, mothers who lost their kids because of the government army, because of the Free Syrian Army, because of the Turkish army, because of the Kurdish army, all of these different armies involved, whether they are real armies or just, militias or whatever. We're not going to get into that, but how to create spaces where mothers can come and say, okay, this is my pain, and I understand that people I defend may also have inflicted another pain on you. So creating this space through digital tools was very important. Another thing the digital tool allows us is access to information. So, for example, the EU puts out a lot of calls for proposal out there. But for simple people in very distant villages, it's very hard for them to understand these calls, how to apply, how to get to these opportunities that will allow them to further their voices and enhance their work on the ground. So that, digital tools allowed us through our platforms to democratize information, I think, which heavily empowers people to learn, grow, make informed decisions, regardless of the many barriers that, they may be facing. The other thing that is very important is usually, as Farah said, there are frontliners who are the big community activists who are involved in all the big dialogues. But these are generally people like me and Farah who speak languages, who have already come from privilege, whether it's financial, educational, language, access. So it's so powerful that digital tools have allowed us to localize these dialogues and bring in community activists and bring this collaboration forward. But also, we did not throw the frontline activists who have so much experience out of these conversations. To the contrary, we've created spaces where the amateurs and the new activists could come in and learn also from these dialogues, because they are listening to these activists. And at the same time, the big voices, the big activists that are now, exiled because of who is in control in their area, and they are living in Europe or the US and have lost touch of the realities on the ground, the activists on the ground could give them a reality check and say, no, this is the Syria you knew 12 years ago, but actually Syria today does not look at all like the Syria you knew. Let me tell you about the new Syria. So don't forget that, as I said, Syria is a country where for 40 years there was no dialogue. And then for another 13 years, there was no dialogue. So, there was even worse dialogue. So this is why I think digital spaces allowed us to have these spaces of convergence, amplifying marginalized voice, but also promoting social justice through online activism, giving them the spaces to talk and mobilize and raise awareness and advocate on issues that are important to them. And as Vanessa, we were talking briefly before the panel, it's spaces where people can tell their stories in the way that they want. And I think digital tools empowers them to be able to do these things, and also economically empowers them to access opportunities. And also it's a huge tool to reduce inequalities and allow people to really play a transformative role in their own futures and be owners of their own futures. So as Farah said, we started working with homogeneous groups. Farah would work with groups that look like her, sound like her, from her ethnicity, from her race, from her background, and I would do the same. And then little by little, we started to integrate these groups together, and I started to facilitate groups that don't look like me, and vice versa, until we were able at some point to be accepted and build a trust in all of these geographies, and people to build trust to accept diversity when they saw us working so greatly together. And I think this is a great, one of the greatest things. And also being able to create spaces through digital tools, through the WhatsApp calls before, the Facebook likes and loves on their statuses, which makes them feel heard and understood by us, etc. So we were able to create spaces where people feel seen, heard, places where they could experience and talk about their grief, their anger, their trauma, and to be the center, for them to be the center of their own lives and stories and be the storytellers themselves. I feel like this is why I need to say thank you, digital tools and digital facilitation, because it has really been transformative in the context of such a complicated and over the place conflict like the one in Syria.
Thank you, Rouba. And, many of the things that you're sharing are, just a reminder that what we know about building trust offline is still applicable to when we hold the online space, but then, need to know how to do things in a more intimate, private way when you bring people into public, and how you curate that sense of belonging, right? So that people will come back and feel involved in this. It sounded to me like a little bit of an accident that it ended up being 5 women who founded this and who facilitated it. I think you're even 7 or something. But what have been some of the challenges or the opportunities of being women holding this kind of online space? Go ahead, Farah.
Thank you, Lena. I guess it was not coincident. Actually, it was a planned coincidence to have 5 women facilitator with this diverse background to be the one leading this initiative. The idea came, as I told you in the beginning, that each one of us from her own network and platform, we were highlighting the needs to have a space for Syrians to meet and hear each other, regardless of our personal differences, because we, as Rouba said, we have a lot of differences among us, but we started by having one shared common value, which is Syria is for everyone, and we need to have a space for everyone to meet and discuss and hear each other, and like Rouba said, to be the storytellers of their life and their experiences. So it is unique, especially if I want to take you one step back, because in Syria, the function of facilitation, moderation is pretty new, and it's mostly started to be more common in the last few years, but it's mostly dominated by men. So a lot of men, they are the one who are doing training, facilitation, for like even small organization or bigger ones. So for us, when we started this initiative, when they started this space, a lot of people were not sure, like, why we're doing that. Are you sure you are a facilitator, or you just need to just manage a dialogue or give space to people to express their feelings? But it's just not just an actual facilitation or moderation. But what we did is we gambled in our own reputation. We agreed on this is how we need the space to look like. We started accessing our own network, as Rouba said, and spread the word about the need of this, the importance of this space and why we need to come together. And actually, a lot of people did for various reasons. A lot of them, especially those coming from hard-to-reach areas or the communities where they were never been part of this kind of discussion, they were relieved. Yes, we want to be part of this process. So they came and they were so excited and so enthusiastic. But from the prominent perspective, and the very big frontliners, let's say, they came to assess, and they came out of curiosity to see, okay, let's see where this is going, and I will assess later whether I want to engage or not. And then it was up to us as a facilitator to keep the focus on the space, on Syria, and to make it a Syrian-centered process, Syrian-led process, and create different level of incentives to people to be willing to be part of this space. So we, I don't know if it's like something that we came up with, or because we are women, we were thinking about this one kind of communication, investing in the relationship with the people. But in the beginning, it was a bit challenging because some people did not take it seriously, take our role seriously. They thought that we are just here to, collect some information, send it to the EU, and then go home. But then they were kind of, some of them happily surprised, others not very happily surprised that we are still here, and we are actually leading a very complicated and very deep discussion, and we are moving the discussion, elevating the level of discussion even deeper with a wider spectrum of people. So at the beginning, it was a bit like a question mark, but I did not really feel that because we came up with a very solid strategy. I did not see that this kind of intimidation happening after, let's say, 1 year of our work, because after that, a lot of people, they accepted our role. They took it for real. They did not see it as lightly as they used to see it before in the beginning. And now a lot of people come to us if they want to get access somewhere, or to be trained on certain issue, or to be linked, because they see our role not just a moderator or facilitator within this space, but also with donor community, with policymakers, with other Syrian organizations working in different geographies, different areas. So they started to see our role as a bridge where they can assess ideas, and then we try to facilitate bridging these ideas to a more kind of concrete actions, and also finding real partners in different geographies. Because for us, it's very crucial to start to move away from the 3 locations that Rouba was talking about and see Syria as a whole, and to encourage Syrians to work together cross-geographic through the conflict line, because the conflict was kind of imposed on us as civil society, as communities, and as Syrians in general. So we were trying to support the civil actors who were trying to go beyond these conflict lines and connect the communities together.
We can imagine the kinds of dangers that the facilitators have faced, as well as the dangers that many of the participants may have feared or faced in participating in these things, while, as we know, the conflict is ongoing, where there is deep suspicion and mistrust adjacent to the trust that you're creating within your group. So Rouba, tell us a little bit more about how what's been your mindset about safety for participation in this?
The challenges are not just related to risks. So I'm also going to address a little bit the challenges of like these, digital convening, if I may call it that. First challenge, I feel like, is to maintain the participants' engagement and attention was one of the challenges for us, because meeting face-to-face is always nicer. You have a coffee here and there, you discuss, people are engaged in the conversation. But when you're on a screen, you have your kids next to you, especially as mothers or women, you have your phone in your hand, you have, all of these distractions around you. You can open your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, your whatever. It's so hard to keep these people engaged. Yeah, so I mean, I know, but some people also close their camera and they say it's for security purposes, and get them to engaged while they close their cameras is also we cannot force them to open their cameras because for safety reason. And if their camera is closed, we have no clue where they are. They might be having a picnic with their family. We don't know. Plus, sometimes the internet is so bad that we cannot tell them to open their camera because simply we can't hear them anymore. So not putting names to faces, I feel, was very important for security. But at the same time, it allowed us to, not know who we're talking to sometimes or what they are doing. That was a challenge. Technical issues is a huge thing. Poor internet connectivity in Syria and around Syria. People not having the money to charge their internet bundles always. This disrupted the sessions and created also difficulties in these sessions. As you said, securing and privatizing participants' data, knowing that the reports we sent them may be sent to intelligence in Syria and Turkey and Kurdish held areas in Iran, in Russia and America, and I don't know where, and plus us being based in these areas. So at the end of the day, we decided, okay, what we're going to do is that we're going to decide that we're going to always assume the people we are talking to are sitting in an intelligence office of some sort. So we're going to have to curate conversations that are still interesting, genuine, true, knowing that Iranian, Russian, Kurdish, American, Qatari, Turkish, Syrian, Lebanese, Hezbollah, all of these intelligence people may be sitting behind these people's laptops. So that was the challenge for us, how to ensure everyone's safety, because we were bringing cross-geographic people. So your safety might be very different from Farah's safety, because her safety might be not saying this buzzword, but for your safety, you have to say this buzzword, because if you don't say it, you're a traitor. So it's about how creating these spaces where, yes, you can sign in with a fake name. Of course, it's not going to be recorded, while assuming that people might be listening in. And I think this is the balance we were trying to set up, and also managing participants' behavior so that they maintain respect, inclusivity, not being engaged in bullying. I mean, this morning I was looking at Instagram, and Miss Rachel, the amazing Miss Rachel that does videos for our kids, even her is being bullied. Such a kind and amazing person talking about children all over the world is being bullied. So imagine, inclusivity in such an environment where there is conflict, there's killing, there is blood, there is people confiscating properties, losing properties. So I think we needed to be vigilant about bullying, online harassment, inappropriate misconduct, because people can send to each other personal messages on Zoom that, we may not be able to see, or we may not be able to have eyes all over our faces because we're facilitating, moderating, and mediating at the same time. So how can we make sure this harmful, offensive things do not happen? How we can create this, foster a culture of respect, inclusivity, while making sure participants are feeling okay. Plus, we are women facilitators. So as Farah said, we are being undermined, sometimes dominated by others. So I think all of this, while trying to make sure that people are safe, that we are safe, because some of our colleagues who are inside Syria at the moment, facilitating from inside Syria, get asked for questioning in all of these different zones. I'm based in Lebanon. Sometimes I get questioned. Farah is based in Europe. She has different challenges that she has to maintain. So I think it's about how, as you said, like Charlie in the chat, like inclusivity, while taking into account all of these different variables, and it becomes very challenging. But I think these are the kind of challenges that we are trying to grapple with, all of these different complexities.
Some people co-found something, but they don't necessarily stick with it. And so here you are 4 years later, you're sticking with it. And I just would love to hear from you when you look forward, what are the key challenges that you're really trying to grapple with sort of in the short term? And then where do you feel like you want to be? If we invite you back next year, or if, in 4 years from now, what is the bigger vision? So go ahead, Farah, first.
I'll start where Rouba just ended. So it's and also related to your previous question. I think the challenge of us being a woman in this ongoing, vivid, very, very super complicated conflict was one of the main challenges. But for us, we transform it, because that's what we do, to a goal. Because now our aim is to move forward to more like organized kind of activities, and especially in the role of women in mediation. So now we are working to launch the first women mediator network in Syria, which will be a space for another woman to join, where we can provide access, expertise, the tools, and the protection, so they can actually gain the needed experience and expertise to be actively engaged in all this kind of mediation effort that's happening and need to happen, whether in the community level, the civil society level, or even the political level. So I think one of the major and very important role is to keep our, of course, eyes on the ball. We need to keep these discussions, this dialogue ongoing with the focus on the Syrian priorities, but also see how we can create a more formal network where women can, where it's open for more women to join. Because we are stewards, but we are not gatekeepers. We want this to be open for a lot of people, especially women, where they can be even more influential than us, because Syria needs more, and Syria needs all the efforts.
Very briefly, I think, as Farah said, these are the proactive steps. I think if we had all the resources in the world, we would have infinite trainings for women and men and people with disability on using tech tools, because this is something we would like more people to be involved who don't have the means to. I would tell the big giant tech people in Silicon Valley to send us like a huge internet balloon to the refugee camps, so that more people can join online without their internet breaking. I feel like maybe get more training on how, and this is Vanessa, I know we're going to do this, Lena, I know we're going to do this together, and you're going to help us out and mentor us, which we really appreciate, on how AI can really help us into how to, analyze the data that we're coming out with and get people's opinions in a more efficient way. I feel like we lack these tools yet. We're still not very, we're not there yet. I feel one other thing is try to create like more safer spaces and see how we can navigate this in a better way, and I think just like doing all of this while being aware that AI might throw it out and facilitate in our place in 10 years. So also navigating, like staying relevant as humans, within all of this complexity, I feel like is something we need to also think about. I feel like all of us in a way.
Right. We can envision co-piloting with an AI and an AI moderator. There's actually something called automated conversation engines, so that'll scare you, but those exist already. So
I've heard about
wonderful.
it.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, how do you take care? You know, a lot of the sessions in All Things in Moderation have looked at the human being who is the moderator, right? And you know, how is it that you stay motivated, that, you know, you create the right energy within you to be patient, to be persistent, to be humble? What's the trick? Any of you can go ahead.
Actually, it's a good question, because we are not disconnected from the conflict. We are directly impacted by the conflict, and each one of us, we have our personal stories, our personal pain, but in the same time, I think we managed through the time, because we had this agreement from day one that we want this space to be inclusive and we want this space to be for everyone. We agreed that on the internal communication. So a lot of our internal meeting was for designing and the strategic thinking and all of this very important stuff, but also for venting, for screaming, for shouting, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes just release the frustration sometimes. But it's always been, we always maintain this space for each other and also when one of us is very like tired, emotionally drained, cannot really be part of this kind of discussion, some other women will step in to take over. And that's something we've did very naturally, because it's after like all these years for us, it's like we understand when someone is tired, and we understand when we can step aside, you can take your moment to scream and grieve and shout, and then we can laugh about it together. But it's always, I think what Rouba said, it's internally rebuilding this and mediating internally among each other, ourselves, was a very, very important step. So for us, it's our us is a venting machine for us.
Yeah, maybe very briefly to the question of how women lead differently. I feel like, because someone asked, like, being women, how does it change things? I think like I'm gonna like brag, because we have every right to, but women have the amazing ability to be listeners, not be mansplainers, allow people to say their opinions while accepting these opinions, validating people's validating people's emotions, people's valuing their opinions. And I think this really, impacts dialogue. It's really, really impacts dialogue. Emotional intelligence, like when someone is talking, how to react, when to react, I think like these things really matter. And just because someone asked on the Q&A, like they have trouble managing a Facebook group, how do we do all of that? I feel like we have to also be thankful, because we do have a lot of technical and bureaucratic support in the back channels of this network. So while we do a lot of, strategizing, planning, doing the methodologies, engaging with the participants, doing the outreach, running the sessions, we have people sending out the emails, the invites, creating the Zoom links, so we don't have to do these things ourselves. And how do we relax? One final thing, like I'm going to give an example. Last 2 weeks ago, we were in Brussels. This is where we met you, Lena. And I think at some point we were so tired. Farah and my other colleague went out to drink. I took my praying beads and went to the park to walk and pray. And then we came back and we made fun of each other, because we have very different ways of like coping with that, with this being tired. While one of our friends went to see her friend because she recharges using other people's energies, and our fifth colleague was sleeping it off. So I feel like we have very different ways of how to manage between alcohol, praying, walking in nature, sleeping, eating, so it's just like, knowing how you can bring these things out. But yeah, I feel like
Wonderful. No, it's interesting, because there's times when we can really notice that the experiences of being a woman have forced us to pay attention to social cues, perhaps in a more acute way than men have had to. And then when you see that it's an asset as a facilitator, it feels great, because you actually realize that you're able to understand both men and women and their nature, and in the way that we hold space and build trust. There was another question here just about, cultural background and diversity of the conversations. I know that when we spoke earlier, that you have tried to make sure that you have a quota of women. And unsurprisingly, it's not always easy. You made reference to some of the reasons with household responsibilities and others to get women in the session. But I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you want to share about ensuring women's inclusion and participation once they're there, because I'm not sure if, sometimes moderators will say we need a women's only discussion now. Anything you want to share about that?
So maybe Farah can share about this. I'm just going to answer really quickly about the question on Eurocentricity, because as Farah said, we started as a Eurocentric platform, but it took us a lot of activism to bring this back to a Syrian-centered platform with Syrian voices. And that takes a lot of negotiation with donors and a lot of, I would say, like donor, donor teaching. Like, we're teaching the donors how to deal with locals, how to talk to locals. Because, for example, sometimes donors would join into our conversation and say, okay, I have 5 minutes and then I have to leave because I have something more important. I mean, more important than our conversation, really? Then don't join from the start. Like, they come to a panel, they leave in 2 minutes. Or, for example, even the priorities are written in such a Eurocentric way that we have to really negotiate and, use all of our power to turn this into a Syrian-centered conversation. And I feel like this is a work that will be done over many years to reach where, like, decolonizing these conversations, even from our own minds, because sometimes, for example, Syrian colleagues will not join if a European person is not there, because they only think the conversation is important if a white person is there. I mean, so it's also about like raising awareness from donor side and from community side to reclaim our agency in this whole process.
For women participation, as I said, it's the methodology that we were keen to design very, very carefully every time is to take care of all these differences and different backgrounds, including 50-50 participation of women. So for us, we had the different priorities is to have women on board, to have as inclusive as possible sessions, a lot of youth, meaning those young people who are still in the country, they're attached to their communities and they're very active. It's us being women moderator, facilitator made it easier for a lot of women to join, and also made us more sensitive to what are the perfect timing to help the session. For us, it's not just ticking the box that we want to do a session. We agree on time based on our conveniences. No, it's never this way. It's based on the people's conveniences and how we can make it easier for them to access and to attend the meeting. So that's why, for instance, we avoid having sessions on Fridays. We avoid having sessions in the afternoon or during meal times. And that's another reason why we invest in one-to-one calls before and after to understand the concerns, the problem, and also to give them the motivation to be part of this kind of discussion, because a lot of people, they just lost trust and lost hope. And it's very important for them to see beyond this and see why it's important for us to be part of this process. So us being a women facilitator made it a bit easier, I assume, because a lot of people did not see us as a threat. And the way we conducted our work was built on empathy and acceptance and inclusivity. So we tried to maintain it this way through the years. So we managed to build a reputation for this initiative to be inclusive and to be a safe space for everyone, including women. So I think this played a major role in opening the spaces for women. But again, as you said, the women are sometimes more interested to discuss certain topics, but not as interested to discuss political topics. So for this reason, what we did is we tried to merge and integrate the discussion between things related to economic empowerment, for instance, and political participation. So we try to link between the tracks to merge the discussion among different topics where women can feel the more at ease to participate and to join the discussion, because usually discussions around purely political topics can be connected to stigma or some sort of like business. That's why a lot of women, they don't really feel interested to be part of that. For this reason, we modified the way we choose the themes. We modified the way we choose how to integrate the ideas, actually building on this and also building on their inputs in the previous discussion. So we mix and match and see how we can make these topics more relevant and also more attracting for the participant to be part of it.
Thank you, both of you, for the work that you're doing, for the commitment, for the inspiration that you give both to women as well as to peace builders across the world to acknowledge and embrace the power of online space for rehumanization, for building up new constituencies for peace. And, as we encourage people to believe in the power of creating safe online spaces, being digital community stewards, it's really something that has much, much more potential, particularly for people who want to build cohesion and trust in their communities and in places really affected by violent conflict. And it can sometimes feel impossible because we see a lot of toxicity online, and we ask ourselves, how is it that we're asking people to be online even more, acknowledging some of the risks that they may face, even more bullying. But I personally believe that even amidst some of the harms online, the more that we can create the norms of safe, inclusive, healthy, just spaces that really give people a sense of agency and voice, the greater that we're going to make sure that we keep people engaged and believing that they can shape their future, and not feel powerless, as though they have to just be the victims of the kinds of online abuse that we know many people face. So I just really want to, again, thank All Things in Moderation. I want to encourage all of you who've joined us today to reach out, explore the curriculum, get in touch if you're doing this work, and if you want more exchanges about how you can bridge divides through online moderation. And thank you so much to all of you.